Lucina, out of breath, runs as fast as she can through the night forest away from the house. The girl remembers the Baroness's evil words that she is a disgrace like her mother. The woman hit the girl in the face with all her might for daring to answer her. People mock Lucina because she is the illegitimate daughter of Lord Burke, and her mother is famous in the pleasure districts. The girl touches the abrasion on her face and wonders whether it is worth treating. Lucina looks around and is surprised to notice that the forest in this part is completely dry. Walking deep into the forest, the girl feels the heat and wonders if there was really a fire here. Lucina goes out to the edge of the forest and sees a huge dragon lying right in front of her. The heroine notices that the animal's entire body is wounded and covered in blood. The girl boldly approaches the huge monster, who, seeing a man, tries with all his might to get up. Pointing to the wing, Lucina asks if it hurts and asks if the beast wants her to help him. The girl fearlessly looks at the beast and asks him not to worry. She will ease his pain. Lucina places her hands on the dragon's wounds, and a ghostly blue light appears under her palms. Concentrating, the girl realizes that the beast has too many wounds, and she will need a lot of strength. The heroine knows very well how painful it is to be wounded, so she decides that she must stop the dragon's suffering. The dragon moves his absolutely healthy wing in surprise and notices that the girl who saved him is lying unconscious. Moving to the side, the dragon lifts its head to the sky and flames light up around it. After some time, the dragon instead transforms into a handsome young man. The man leans over the girl and thoughtfully says that she is a fearless person. Lucina opens her eyes and hears a human voice, but she is too weak and cannot make out a word. Lucina looks at herself in the mirror in surprise and cannot recognize herself. The girl hears the maids whispering that because of the high sulfur content, the girl's face is a complete mess, but her hair color is pleasant. The maids gossip that the king loves the golden-haired ones, and Lucina will not just be a concubine, but a toy in the hands of the king. The girl sadly thinks that soon as she turns 20, she will be sold to the elderly king. Squeezing her hand in despair, the heroine reflects that 10 years ago she should have run away while she had the chance. The maids apply makeup to the girl as ordered by the Baroness, in the hope that it will subside on the way to the capital. Finally, Lucina is ready. No matter how hard they try to spoil her, you cannot hide her youth and freshness. The Baroness looks at the girl with contempt and declares that nothing can fix her ugly face. The woman fears that the king may be disappointed because he is expecting to see the beauty. But suddenly the woman is interrupted by her son. The young man asks his mother not to worry because he has prepared an excellent price for the girl. The guy opens a casket, which is filled with gold and precious stones. The young man says that the black magician told him that there is a lot of gold in the graves near the border with the lands of Tyre. The woman asks in horror if her son has just returned from robbing the place where Thayer's dragon people bury their ancestors. The Baroness says in despair that her son is just an idiot for getting involved with the Thayerites and their graves. Suddenly, a terrible roar is heard, the castle shakes, and stones fall from the ceiling. Looking out the window, Lucina sees that the castle is being attacked by dozens of dragons, burning everything in their path. Huge warriors on horseback burst into the castle. The knights shout in despair that they were attacked by the Thayerites. Lucina hears the leader of the attackers ordering the exit to be blocked so that no one can escape. Suddenly, the leader looks out the window and meets the girl's gaze. Lucina hides in horror under the window and covers her mouth with her hands, but for some reason the barbarian's gaze seemed familiar to her. Taking off his mask, the Thayerite king orders to burn everyone who dared to desecrate their graves. The guard reports to the lady that the walls are melting, and the enemies want to destroy them all. The Baroness orders a white flag to be immediately hung and an announcement that they are surrendering. Lucina decides that she must take this chance and try to escape. The girl runs down the corridor and decides that if she goes to the stone tower to the north, she can climb over the wall. Running out into the yard, the heroine thinks that this time she must escape. Otherwise, she will not have any more chances. One of the warriors informs his master that the people have hung out a white flag and asks what they should do next. Looking at the people with contempt, the king of the barbarians orders everyone to be beheaded and their heads hung on the wall. Looking at the execution, the Baroness's son falls to his knees and begs to spare him, assuring that he will return all the treasures. The king looks at the young man with a grin and declares that his request is simply ridiculous. He cannot live after desecrating their graves. Leaving, the man orders the entire wall to be burned and everyone killed, sparing no one. The guy sobs, blaming the dark magician for everything because it was he who advised him to rob the graves. The Baroness, in desperation, realizes that she must do something. Otherwise, they will all die. The woman asks the king to wait and declares that she will give him her daughter. The woman shouts that her daughter is beautiful and was chosen by King Brian himself. The Baroness knows that the two kings are irreconcilable enemies, and if you say that your daughter is related to Brian, then this will probably interest the barbarian. The Baroness confidently reports that King Brian was supposed to marry her daughter today. The man looks intently at the woman and asks where, in this case, is her daughter. The Baroness looks around in fear and realizes that Lucina has escaped. Meanwhile, the girl confidently climbs the stairs to the tower. Looking around, Lucina reflects that she should take advantage of the fact that all the knight's attention is focused on the wall. Suddenly, the girl freezes from a strange sound, similar to the sound of wings. At the same moment, one of the dragons grabs the girl by the hand, tearing her away from the stairs. Flying over the wall, Lucina looks at the heads in horror and realizes that all the castle knights have been beheaded. The dragon throws the girl to the ground, and raising her head, she finds herself face to face with the barbarian king. The man notices that the girl is not so beautiful. Does the old king really want her? But suddenly the man notices that the girl has mysterious eyes that look like stars in the night sky at the same time. The king remembers the events of 10 years ago and realizes that he has already seen these eyes. The man thinks that he landed not far from here that time and that girl must live here. The barbarian examines the girl's hair and realizes that it is not at all the same as his savior's. The Baroness says that if the king likes her daughter, she will prepare her and bring her. The man points a spear at Lucina, lifts her chin with the blade, and says that he will give her a choice. The barbarian reveals that the girl can become his soulmate. Staring intently at Lucina, the king continues that she can choose to be buried with the others. Without hesitation, the heroine announces that she agrees to marry the barbarian. The king is somewhat embarrassed by such a quick choice and asks what the name of his chosen one is. Having learned the name, the man says that it is translated as moon from the Bryonian language. The king says that the name suits the girl and says that his name is Hakan. The man leans towards the girl's ear and says that he will take good care of her. Hakan declares that a priest must be present at weddings in Brian and looks around thoughtfully. Noticing a servant among the captives, the king approaches him and says that he intends to get married right now. The women look at the barbarian in bewilderment. Everything happens too unexpectedly. Hakan states that there must be a witness to his marriage at the wedding. The priest asks who it will be. The barbarian declares with a smug grin that the witness will be none other than their king. The man tells everyone after the wedding to tell Brian that Hakan took his wife. The barbarian laughingly says that he is just repaying the debt to the old king for killing the young dragons 10 years ago. Baroness Burke thinks with horror that the barbarian is using Lucina only to get even with Brian. The couple stands before the shaking priest, who begins the ceremony. Suddenly, Hakan looks around and notices that the chaos around is not at all like a wedding and orders flowers to be brought. The warriors carry out the king's orders, and the man hands the bouquet to his bride. Lucina looks at the flowers in amazement, and Hakan notes that according to tradition, the bride should hold a bouquet of flowers. Turning to the priest, the barbarian orders the wedding ceremony to begin. At the end of the ceremony, the priest says in a trembling voice that now the groom can kiss the bride. Hearing about the kiss, Lucina shudders in fear. Everything happens too quickly and unexpectedly. Noticing the girl's horror, the priest decisively says that you can skip the kiss and start straight to prayer. Hakan categorically refuses prayer, declaring that he does not believe in the God to whom they pray in this kingdom. Realizing that there is no choice, the priest invites the couple to confirm their vow with a kiss, and he can finish the ceremony. Hakan approaches Lucina, carefully hugs the girl, pulls her towards him, and kisses her tenderly. The girl begins to feel dizzy from an overabundance of emotions and faints. One of the warriors laughingly remarks that the king barely touched the girl, and she had already lost consciousness. Hakan confidently declares that even his kiss is dangerous. Getting ready to leave, the barbarian says that he is saving the lives of the Baroness and her son only because the same blood flows in them as in his wife. The king continues with a threat that if they dare to approach their graves again, he will wipe the castle from the face of the earth. The dragons leave, and the Baroness, in despair, tells her son that they must return Lucina. Seeing the bewilderment on the young man's face, the woman explains that she sold the girl to King Brian and cannot just give her to the barbarians. Looking around, the Baroness realizes that all their guards are dead, so only hired killers can help them. Lucina wakes up and looks around in surprise, not remembering how she ended up in the carriage. Noticing the girl at the window, the warrior informs the king that his wife has already woken up. Håkon turns to the carriage, but Lucina closes the window with the curtain in fear. The man grins and orders his warriors to stop and set up camp. Lucina hides in fear in the carriage, remembering the events of the past evening. Looking into the carriage, Håkon wonders how the girl is feeling. Lucina shakes with fear and mutters that she is fine. The king extends his hand to the bride and notices that she has not eaten all day and must be hungry. Lucina continues to shake and replies that she is not hungry and would rather stay in the carriage. Håkon suddenly starts laughing and notices that his wife is very shy. The king again holds out his hand and says that it will be cold at night, so it is better to go to the fire. Suddenly, Lucina smells food and realizes that she is really hungry. The girl leans on Håkon and decides to get out of the carriage. The warrior accompanies the king and his bride to the tent prepared for them. Lucina sits closer to the fire, and Håkon carefully covers her with his cloak. The man hands the girl a sandwich and offers to eat while the food is warm. The girl sniffs the food, not daring to try it. In the Baron's house, she ate only stale, moldy bread. Håkon, misjudging the bride's indecisiveness, declares that there is no poison in the food and she can eat it calmly. Lucina takes a bite and freezes in surprise. She has never eaten such delicious food. The girl greedily rushes into the sandwich and bites off huge pieces. The king pours a drink into a cup and notices that if his wife eats so greedily, she might choke. The man hands Lucina a mug and says that it contains sheep's milk and that it is also not poisoned. The girl drinks, remembering that in the castle she had to run errands all day to get breadcrumbs. Håkon thoughtfully examines the bride and wonders how old she is. Upon learning that Lucina has turned 20, the man thoughtfully remarks that she is too young to be the bride of an elderly king. Håkon is furious and reveals that Brian is crazy. 10 years ago, he sent assassins to kill innocent young dragons. In that battle, the man lost his brother, who was a great king at that time. Håkon had to urgently return in order to take the throne as soon as possible and ensure the security of his country. And if that day the dragon had not been seriously wounded and had not fallen into the forest, he would have gone alone and taken the head of King Brian. Suddenly, the man asks if Lucina regrets that she will now not be able to become the king's bride, but she violently shakes her head. Håkon suddenly realizes that he also killed innocent people, and for the girl he must be no different from Brian. Lucina looks up at the man and timidly asks where Thayer's lands are. Håkon looks at the bride in surprise. He expected her to cry and ask to go home, but the girl looks calm. Breaking another sandwich, the dragon says that the people of Brian consider Thayer to be the lands of barbarians and monsters, but this is not at all true. The king hands Lucina food and says that she will soon see everything with her own eyes. The girl unexpectedly comes to the conclusion that life with Håkon will be much more pleasant than her life in the Baron's castle. The man notices that the bride needs to be patient, and when she returns to the palace, she will be able to eat much better food. Looking up from her sandwich, Lucina calmly says that she is still quite happy with everything. The king never ceases to be surprised. The girl, as the daughter of Brian aristocrats, must be very selective. Håkon declares that once his wife has finished eating, she can settle down in the tent, but he still needs to take off his armor. Lucina shudders in fear. She did not expect that they would have to spend the night in the same tent. Håkon calmly undresses, but Lucina, with a frightened cry, tries to hide in her cloak and declares that she will remain outside. The man gently touches the girl's shoulder and says that she doesn't have to do that at all. Håkon scoops Lucina into his arms and notices that they have been husband and wife since yesterday. The king chuckles and says that after the wedding ceremony they should sleep together. Håkon thoughtfully says that in Brian the wedding night is called the consummation of marriage. Lucina looks at the man in complete horror with eyes full of tears and shakes with fear. The embarrassed king reveals that in Thayer, marriage is usually done first, and then, if the woman is pregnant, a wedding ceremony is held. Lucina is completely confused and does not understand how you can first sleep with a man, get pregnant, and only then marry him. Håkon gently wipes the bride's face and says that he did not mean to make her cry. The man asks if being the wife of an old king is better than marrying a dragon. Lucina replies that she is simply scared that things are moving too quickly. Håkon understands that it must be very scary for a girl to be taken from her home and married to one of the barbarian clan. The king gets up, heads to the exit, and declares that the girl need not be afraid. He will not do anything to her. Opening the entrance of the tent, Håkon says that Lucina can rest in peace, and he will remain outside. Talon, seeing his king, asks in surprise why he came and left his wife alone. Håkon sits down with a heavy sigh and announces that he will sleep outside that night. The king doubts that his wife will remain human after being kidnapped and brutalized all day and night. Talon notes with skepticism that the king initially wanted to kill everyone, so why did he suddenly begin to worry about the girl's feelings? Håkon threateningly says that the warrior must choose his words carefully because Lucina is now his wife. Talon declares that he does not recognize his king. Not only does he care about the woman, it is also because of her that he left her mother and brother alive. The king thoughtfully admits that Lucina reminds him very much of someone. The man thinks that his savior should also live in the castle, and by releasing Berk's people, he will repay her debt. Talon states that, be that as it may, it is very good that his king has found a bride, because he needs an heir. The warrior tells the king that creating an heir to the dragon clan is hard work, and therefore he should try to be as close to the bride as possible. Lucina wakes up, rubs her eyes, and is surprised to realize that morning has come. The girl remembers that before falling asleep, she cried for a long time, and now, with smudged makeup, her face must look terrible. Looking out of the tent, Lucina hears the murmur of water and realizes that somewhere nearby there is a stream in which she can wash herself. Looking at her reflection in the water, the girl notices that the red spots on her face have become much more noticeable. Lucina debates whether to treat the spots, but remembering Håkon's words about her wedding night, she decides that she must look as bad as possible. Suddenly, the girl hears a noise behind her and, turning around, notices a man standing. Having grabbed the girl, one of the mercenaries notes that they need to get into the forest as quickly as possible so that the dragons cannot find them. Hearing the Baroness's name in a conversation, Lucina thinks in despair that she cannot return to the castle. It starts to rain, and one of the men says that if you enter the forest without an offering, the dwarven elf Fuka will send rain. After a while, the kidnapper notices that the girl is shaking too much. Having examined Lucina's face, the man comes to the conclusion that she is sick with something. The mercenaries think that the girl has caught a barbarian infection. They don't want to lose a lot of money, but they are also afraid of catching a fatal disease. Suddenly, the kidnapper sees that his partner's neck is pierced by an arrow and he falls dead. Håkon and Talon prepare to attack, not intending to spare the kidnappers of the royal bride. The mercenary pulls out a knife, presses it to Lucina's throat, and declares that if anyone gets close to them, he will kill her. Håkon looks at his opponent in rage and tells Lucina to close her eyes. A moment later, with one powerful blow, the Dragon King knocks the mercenary's head off his shoulders. The man approaches the horse and asks Lucina if she is okay, because she is shaking so much. The girl saw that Håkon's entire face was covered in blood, but to her surprise, she was not afraid, but felt safe. Having cut the bonds on the bride's hands, the king wraps her in a cloak so that she can keep warm. Noticing that the girl has a fever, Håkon upsetly says that they set off in pursuit as soon as they noticed the loss, but apparently they were too late. The man hugs Lucina and asks for forgiveness for what she had to endure. Taking the bride in his arms, the king says that she needs to be patient a little. As soon as they leave the forest, the rain will stop. Turning to the soldiers, the man orders them to pitch tents and make a fire as soon as they leave the forest. Lucina clings to the king and thinks that she really feels good next to him and does not need to return to Berk. In a tent, warming herself by the fire, a girl tries to wipe the blood from her face with a handkerchief. Looking at her reflection, Lucina notices that due to the heat, the spots have become brighter, and now she looks just like a sick person. The girl again wonders whether she should cure herself, but she's afraid of becoming attractive to the king. But remembering how Hakan held her close to him in the forest, Lucina suddenly thinks that maybe sleeping with him wouldn't be so bad after all. The girl finally decides to cure herself, but suddenly hears a voice asking her not to do this. Turning around, Lucina sees a small child standing in front of her. The kid looks closely at the girl and says that he is a forest elf named Fuka. The elf thoughtfully says that the girl speaks much better than he thought, because yesterday she was silent all day. Fuka says he followed the energy he first encounters in Thayer and asks if the girl has healing powers. The elf begins to shout that Lucina should not use her abilities so indiscriminately. If someone finds out about this, she will be in great danger. Fuka explains that the healing ability is very rare and everyone will want to get it. The girl thanks the elf, and he notices that she has a very beautiful speech and wonders why Lucina speaks so little. The girl sadly admits that she is afraid to speak in front of a large number of people because they might get angry and hit her. Lucina notices that the elf is not a person, so she is not afraid of him at all. Suddenly, the girl admits that she has already met a large red dragon before. Finally able to speak without fear, Lucina tells a story from 10 years ago. Suddenly, the tent floor opens and Hakan asks permission to enter. Fuka quickly runs away, saying goodbye that they will definitely see each other later. The king enters and, looking at his bride, freezes, asking what is wrong with her face. Lucina embarrassedly tries to cover her face and mutters that it's all because of the fever. Hakan examines the girl and asks if she is definitely not sick. How can a fever cause such marks? Turning to Talon, the king orders to immediately bring a doctor. The warrior looks into the tent with interest and wonders what is happening there. Suddenly, Talon grabs the king and runs out of the tent, shouting that the king's bride has smallpox. The guy says that in the past, Brian's people brought a smallpox epidemic to Thayer, and the symptoms are very similar. Lucina tries to explain that she doesn't have smallpox at all, but that the spots on her face were caused by paint. Talon does not hear the girl and asks the ruler not to approach so as not to catch the infection. The girl tries to justify herself, but because of her excitement, she cannot express her thoughts normally. Suddenly, the warrior draws his sword, points it at Lucina, and orders her not to approach. The warriors in the camp begin to talk in fear, fearing that the king's wife has brought a fatal disease. Hakan tells Talon to calm down and put the sword away. They cannot be sure that it is smallpox. Turning to the bride, the king asks what she wanted to say. Lucina understands that if she doesn't start speaking normally, she will die and tries to explain about the paint that contained sulfur and saffron juice. Talon, not understanding anything, says that the girl is delirious due to fever. Lucina stutters. The more worried she is, the less coherent her words sound. The girl recalls that for every word she said she received slaps in the face from the Baroness. And one day, Lucina overheard the maids talking that it would be better for the girl to keep her mouth shut in order to avoid punishment. The girl thinks that no one listens to her anyway, and she cannot speak clearly and coherently in such a situation. The warrior declares that everything is obvious, and they cannot take the girl to the palace. They must burn her and everything she touched. Talon states that the girl has the blood of people who insulted their graves, and that she should not have been saved at all. Lucina understands that if she doesn't do anything, she will die very soon. The girl calls on her power in hopes of healing the spots on her face. But suddenly, Lucina remembers Fuchs' words that if her abilities are revealed, many will want to kill her. Hakan stares at the bride and tells her to calm down first. The king declares that he will listen to the girl until he understands what she wants to say. But Talon objects that this is very dangerous. Turning sharply, Hakan confidently declares that his bride does not have smallpox. The king explains that with smallpox, the rash appears only after the fever subsides, and Lucina's symptoms appeared at the same time. Talon looks at the ruler in bewilderment and realizes that he is right. The king, to the girl's delight, says that with smallpox it is difficult to eat because of the nausea and rash around the mouth, and his bride has a very good appetite. Turning to Lucina, Hakan asks what she said about sulfur and dye. The lord calmly notes that no one will touch his bride, so she needn't worry. Thinking about it, the king suggests that with the help of dye and sulfur, the girl could make a lightning hair dye. After calming down, Lucina reveals that the old king loves his hair like this, so the lady told her to dye it. Hakan looks at the bride and thinks that she, it turns out, didn't have this kind of hair from birth. The king points to Lucina and remarks that apparently too toxic paint caused such a rash on her face. Hakan suggests that Talon look at the fact that the rash is worst on the forehead and hairline. The king says that the inflammations that got wet in the rain only got worse from the moisture, which is probably what the girl wanted to say. Putting away the sword, Talon reports that toxic sulfur on contact can indeed cause such symptoms. Hugging the bride, Hakan states that if she had smallpox, he too would have to be burned because he touched and kissed her. The girl looks at the king with interest. He is the first person who seriously listened to what she said. Lucina muses that if she opened her mouth in front of anyone else, everyone would either get angry or laugh. But no one would listen to her. Hakan kindly says that the bride has a fever and she should not stand in the cold. One of the warriors comes into the tent and reports that the kidnappers have confessed to everything. The warrior continues that the mercenaries were following the orders of the Baroness and had to find and return her daughter. Furious, Hakan says that these people do not take Thayer seriously if they decided to do such insolence. The king says that he will immediately return to the castle and burn absolutely everyone. But suddenly, Lucina hangs on his arm. Turning around, the king says that he will not make an exception for anyone. Not only did they desecrate the graves, but now they dared to touch the king's bride. Realizing that the girl is not going to beg him for mercy, the man wonders if she would mind if he killed her mother and brother. Lucina doesn't know whether she should say that the Baroness is not her mother, and that she herself is an illegitimate child. The girl was the daughter of a woman very famous in the entertainment districts. With such a pedigree, she would not be married. Deciding that she needs to pretend to be the Baroness's daughter, Lucina falls to the floor and begs Hakan not to kill her mother and brother. Taking the bride by the hand, the king asks her to get up and not sit on the cold floor since she is sick. Taking the girl in his arms, the man whispers in her ear whether she will kiss him if he spares her family. Approaching Lucina's face, Hakan whispers that he cannot so easily forgive those who dared to attack the king's wife. Lucina answers her husband that if he spares her family, then she is ready to do whatever the king pleases. Looking into his wife's eyes, Hakan constantly remembers the child who saved him 10 years ago. Deciding that he no longer wants to torment his sick wife, the king once again asks her for a kiss. The man reminds that Lucina agreed to do whatever he wants, and he only asks for a kiss. The girl closes her eyes and reaches out to meet her husband, waiting for a kiss. Hakan orders the mercenaries to be beheaded, brought to the castle, and told that if anyone touches his wife, people or land, he will burn them to the ground. The king orders antipyretics and light food to be served, and says that they will set out as soon as the fever subsides. Sitting at Lucina's bedside, her husband says that he will post guards in front of the tent so that she no longer has to worry. The girl thanks her husband, and he asks with a smile if she will give him another kiss as a sign of gratitude. Noticing Lucina's embarrassment, the king heads for the exit and wishes her a good rest. Hearing Hakan hum, Lucina wonders if her kiss made him so happy. Finally, the carriage enters the lands of Thayer, and Lucin admires the luxury that reigns around. The girl has heard more than once that Thayer is something like a cave, which is inhabited by backward barbarians who eat flying animals. The carriage stops. Talon opens the door and invites the girl to get out. Suddenly, Lucina smells a strange smell, somewhat reminiscent of a mixture of musk and sulfur, and it makes her feel very dizzy. Hakan explains that people with strong earth energy take time to get used to the smell of Thayer, who has strong fire energy. Lucina reflects that when she is in the arms of her husband, she feels safe. The king proudly asks what the girl thinks of Thayer's palace. Lucina honestly admits that the palace is very different from what she heard about it before. The king says with contempt that Brian does not recognize Thayer's race, including the dragon race, as people. The man says that due to prejudice, few people know that Thayer is the land of gold, and that it is the richest and most beautiful continent. Lucina looks around with delight and is amazed that she can live in such a place. The people around noisily welcome the return of their master. Behind those entering, whispers of people are immediately heard, wondering what kind of woman is walking next to their king. The old priestess folds her hands on her chest and, like the others, greets her master. The priestess notices in surprise that the king brought the energy of the earth to them and dips his hand into a bowl of water. The priestess looks intently at Lucina and extends her wet hand to her. The girl gets terribly scared and hides behind Hakan in horror, hoping that he will protect her. The king kindly explains that this is sacred water, and this is all done in order to cleanse the bad energy of outsiders. When Thayer's people leave the kingdom, bad energy clings to their body and soul, so upon their return they are cleansed with holy water. The man encourages his wife not to be afraid, because this is done for the purpose of greeting and not to harm. As holy water flows down the girl's face, she begins to feel as if the rash is getting smaller. After some time, the priestess says that she has completed the purification ceremony, so the king can enter the palace. Suddenly, in the palace, with a loud scream, a woman runs up to the couple and throws herself into the arms of the king. The woman confidently says that the ruler showed the greatness of their tribe to the ignorant people from Brian, and she is very proud of him. Lucina looks at the young woman in fascination. She is so beautiful and looks like a queen. Hakan politely thanks Carrot and claims that it is because she cares about him so much. The woman examines Lucina and asks in surprise if this girl is really a war trophy. The girl is ashamed to hear that she looks very dirty and should be washed immediately. The king states that he is sorry to report so late, but Lucina is not a trophy, but his wife from Burke. The carriages and maids listen to their master with great amazement and do not believe what they hear. Hugging his wife by the shoulders, Hakan says that the queen's place should not be empty for long, so Lucina will give birth to his child and become Thayer's queen. Carrot looks at the girl with disgust and declares that her whole body is covered in pus. The king begins to hastily examine his wife and asks in excitement if she is really wounded. Meanwhile, Lucina noticed that the dye began to wash off from her hair. Was this really how the holy water worked? Looking at his wife, the king notices the color of the hair and realizes that it was originally silver. Hakan calmly tells Carrot that Lucina does not have pus, but only paint, so she has nothing to worry about. The woman points her finger at the girl and asks if she can fulfill the obligation destined for her. Lucina looks at her husband in bewilderment and asks what kind of commitment Carrot is talking about. Hakan changes the subject and says that the girl should go and change her clothes. Turning to Carrot, the king orders a maid to be allocated for his wife. Without turning around, Carrot orders Titi to take the girl to the palace, to which the maid bows and assures the wife of the late king that she will do everything. While leaving behind the maid, Lucina turns around and now understands why Carrot behaves so freely. The girl is embarrassed. She initially thought that Carrot and Hakan were lovers, but it turns out that the woman is the wife of her husband's late brother. In the chambers, the maid politely bows and says that her name is Titi, and from now on she will serve Mrs. Lucina. The girl looks around the luxurious chambers, and the maid explains that until the lady gives birth to an heir, she cannot visit the queen's palace. Titi explains that once Lucina gives birth to the king's child, she will be able to marry him according to local law and become the official queen. The maid helps the girl change clothes, and Lucina thinks that the rash on her face really went away after the holy water. The girl asks Titi if she can still get holy water. The maid promises to go and find out. Lucina is left alone, and a small green bird immediately flies up to her and declares that the girl is behaving very intelligently. Seeing the girl's amazement, the bird takes the form of an elf, who joyfully declares that he is Fuka. The elf notices that Lucina is doing the right thing by not using her abilities. The girl tells Fouquet that she will be better off in Thayer than in Burke. No one beats her here. The elf looks at the girl seriously and asks if the thought of having a child with Hakan frightens her. Lucina reasons that everything that is happening is strange, because according to Brian's laws, they are already married, but according to Thayer's laws, they are not yet married. Suddenly, the girl hears that Titi is returning, and Fuka instantly disappears. The maid happily reports that they were allowed to use holy water. Hakan is undressed by the maids. Talon enters and reports that the dragons have returned from Burke. The king asks whether his order was carried out, to which the warrior says that the Baroness and her son were terribly scared. Talon asks the ruler in bewilderment if he will really forgive the inhabitants of Burke just like that. 10 years ago, assassins were sent to the lands of Thayer, and the king was unable to take revenge on the one who killed the previous king. Talon fears that after everything that has happened, the people of Brian will look down on the Thairites. Haakon furiously says that he won't leave anything like that. But first, he needs to find out something. The king reminds the warrior of how 10 years ago, hit by a black arrow, he fell into the forest and his life was saved by a girl on Burke's territory. Talon notices that after so many years, the girl has long grown up, and perhaps she still lives there. The king states that he wants to kill all the people there, but he wants to spare this child's life. The warrior asks with interest why the ruler didn't take the child with him then. Her healing powers would have served the Thayers. The king remarks that it would be anything but grateful to take the child who saved his life away from his family. Haakon remembers silver hair and eyes, but judging by the scars on her face and her ugly appearance, she must be the daughter of a commoner or servant. The king orders Talon to find this child before the attack on Burke is carried out. Lost in thought, Haakon orders information to be found about whether Lucina is the Baron's biological daughter. Haakon reflects that for a noblewoman, his wife is too shy and distant from the family. Talon thoughtfully asks if the Baroness really deceived them and slipped in a simple girl. After thoroughly washing herself in the hot spring pool, Lucina is pleased to notice that the paint has completely washed away. Suddenly, the girl hears footsteps and, turning around, sees with fear that Haakon is entering the hall. The girl hides behind a column, and the king, not noticing anyone, calmly undresses and enters the water. Lucina is completely confused and does not understand what to do next in this awkward situation. Suddenly, Haakon notices that silver hair is developing in the water behind the column. The king is surprised that a woman was brought into the pool without his order. Haakon loudly asks who is hiding there, but Lucina covers her mouth with her hands and does not respond. The king angrily thinks that Talon has sent another girl to seduce him. Haakon loudly asks who ordered the woman to come here. Lucina is completely lost and realizes that if she doesn't do anything, her husband will see her. Unable to think of anything better, the girl takes a deep breath and dives into the water. Haakon laughingly remarks that he will not allow the uninvited guest to simply escape. Sitting underwater, Lucina watches in despair as strong male legs approach her and decides to swim away. Angry, Haakon asks how some maid can create so much trouble and run away from the king himself. The man grabs Lucina by the hand and abruptly pulls her out from under the water. The king threatens the girl to tell Talon that his tricks will not go unnoticed, but falls silent without finishing. Having looked closely, the king recognizes his wife in the lying girl with beautiful silver hair. The man looks closely at his wife, realizing that without paint, she is strikingly similar to that same girl. Haakon continues to look at his wife and thinks that everything fits in age. Liuchina at this time looks at the expression on her husband's face and is afraid that now he will beat her. The girl, in despair, asks the king for forgiveness, says that she was wrong, and begs him not to beat her. Haakon listens to his wife in bewilderment and says that she has not done anything wrong to him. The girl falls to her knees and declares that she will do anything, just don't let them beat her. Haakon puts on his robes and, sitting in front of his wife, declares that in his palace, no one will lay a finger on the girl. Lucina asks if the king himself will beat her, but the man once again says that she has not done anything wrong. Haakon wonders what the girl is doing here. She admits that she wanted to wash herself with holy water. Patting his wife on the head, the king admits that he decided that the maids had ignored his order, which is why he got angry. Running his hand along the girl's cheek, the man sincerely asks her forgiveness for scaring her. Leaning towards his wife, the king says that after the birth of the child, she will become a queen, so she should not show her weakness to anyone. Helping Lucina to her feet, the king declares that his queen must rule the palace with dignity. Haakon thinks that the girl who saved him was very brave and was not afraid of anything, and Lucina is afraid even of her shadow. Obviously, that girl's social status was not high at all. Moreover, if Lucina had healing powers, she would have cured her rash so that no one would think of smallpox. Finding herself too close to her husband, the girl once again asks for forgiveness. Grabbing a lock of hair, Haakon playfully asks where Lucina is going to go. Hugging his wife tightly, the king notices that she has not yet bathed. The girl again begins to tremble with fear and assures the man that she is already finished. Håkon picks up Lucina in his arms and suggests that in this case they leave the pool together. When his wife asks where he is taking her, the king calmly replies that he is going to his bedroom. Seeing his wife's reaction, Håkon asks in surprise if she is still afraid of him. Titi examines the lady's hair and says that their king will certainly like this color. Other maids doubtfully ask whether the girl's body can handle such a burden. Laughing, one of the girls remarks that the lady is too fragile and will simply die after a night with the master. To Lucina's surprised question, the maids explain that she will not be able to withstand the greatness of the dragon race. Titi abruptly interrupts the maids and declares that her mistress will certainly handle everything. Leading Lucina out of her chambers, the maid declares that she will give birth to a beautiful child and become a queen. No one should doubt it. The collected and well-groomed Lucina enters the king's chambers and blushes deeply with embarrassment. Håkon says that the girl is very beautiful and invites her to come closer. Examining his wife's curls, the king wonders why she hid such beauty behind that vulgar dye. Lucina thinks in embarrassment that for the first time in her life, she was called beautiful. Suddenly, Håkon leans towards his wife's ear and quietly asks if she will lose consciousness again if he kisses her. Without waiting for an answer, the man presses his lips into the girl's, and she is surprised to realize that she feels softness and warmth. Noticing Lucina looking at the designs, Håkon says that the tattoos represent the designs of the tribe he was born into. The king puts the girl's hand on his chest and says that she does not need to be afraid if she wants to touch them. Lucina is surprised to realize how hard the guy's body is. It's as if she's touching a stone. Håkon asks his wife if she will run away and suggests spending the night together. The man carefully lifts Lucina and places her on the bed, hovering over her. But then images of the maids and their conversations about the fact that she might die appear in the girl's head. Closing her eyes, Lucina begins to shake, thinking that she does not want to die. Noticing his wife's fear, Håkon silently moves away and gets out of bed. As if reading the girl's thoughts, the king calmly says that he is not angry. Suddenly, Lucina is asked by her husband if she would like to return to her family in Berk. Without thinking for a minute, the girl confidently says that she will not return back. Lucina declares that she will bear Håkon a beautiful child and become his queen. Turning around, the king asks if the girl knows what it means to be Thayer's queen. Håkon says that the wife should be ready to give her life for him and Thayer, and asks if she is ready for this. Without waiting for an answer, the man puts on his robe and says that he will touch the girl until she is ready for it. As he leaves, the king says that Lucina can rest here, and he will sleep elsewhere. A few days later, all the maids were gossiping that the king had left his wife alone in the chambers. Suddenly, Lucina heard in a conversation that the king wanted to marry Miss Carrot. The girl turns around in amazement. Her worst fears are confirmed. The ruling Thayer dynasty has a marriage custom according to which, after the death of the older brother, the younger brother continues to live with his wife. In addition, Lucina heard that the young king had long been in love with Carrot, even during his brother's life. Several more days passed, but after that night, Lucina and Håkon did not see each other again. Titi tried to calm the lady down, telling her that the king was away, and when he returned, he would immediately come to her. Lucina desperately reasons that if Håkon is really in love with Carrot, then she has no chance. Suddenly, a joyful Titi runs into the chambers with a loud cry. The maid reports that the king has finally returned and asks if the lady would like to greet him. In the corridor, Lucina runs into Carrot, who remarks that she did not recognize the Bryan maiden because of her hair. Lucina bows her head and mutters greetings to the Queen of Carriages. The woman mockingly says that she doesn't understand a word of what the girl is mumbling. Carrot states that if Lucina speaks in such an idiotic manner even in bed, then her king must surely be annoyed. Grabbing the girl's hand, Carrot says that she is too skinny, and even if she has a relationship with the king, she will not stand it for long and will die. The woman confidently says that now is the best moment for Lucina to escape, because she did not come here of her own free will. Seeing that the king's wife is surprised by the words about death, Karen asks in bewilderment if Håkon didn't tell her about it. The woman says that Thayer's palace is a mausoleum for women, and it is difficult to find one who will survive after receiving the dragon's energy. Carrot states that if Lucina wants to survive, then she needs to give up her vain dreams. Suddenly, the king's voice is heard, wondering what the girls are talking about, looking with suspicion at his wife's upset face. Carrot bows respectfully before the ruler. Lucina, looking at her, repeats after her. Carrot notices that it is impossible to talk to someone who cannot say words normally. She was simply giving advice, like an elder in the palace. The woman says that not everyone can become the partner of the great dragon, and such a weak and timid woman is throwing away her own life in vain. Carrot tells an astonished Hakan that he must make sure he chooses the right partner for himself and Thayer. The king thanks for the advice, but assures that he can handle it himself, and calling Lucina, leaves. Walking through the courtyard, Hakan explains that he has been busy lately, so they haven't seen each other. Seeing that the girl is upset, the king asks if there is something that is causing her discomfort. Lucina hesitates, and Hakan asks if she wants to tell him something. The girl realizes that she has a lot of questions, but she doesn't know where to start. Lucina cannot gather her scattering thoughts into a heap and mutters something about death and the queen. Hakan, not understanding anything, is afraid that he said something last time that scared his wife. The man says that becoming a dragon's partner is very risky, and it is clear that Lucina, who was brought by force, does not want to die for the king and Thayer. With a grin, Hakan notes that for the girl there is no difference between him and the king of Bryan. Suddenly, Lucina grabs her husband's hand and passionately assures him that there is a difference. The girl admits that Hakan is the only one who really listens to her and has never been angry with her. Hakan, in bewilderment, asks if he understood his wife correctly, and she nods in the affirmative. The king is surprised and says that Lucina is the only daughter of Baron Burke, so why then no one listens to her? The girl realizes that she almost let it slip and thinks that she shouldn't admit her origins. Hakan realizes that the girl was clearly a hated daughter. Otherwise, she would not have been sold to the old king as a concubine. The man presses a lock of hair to his face and says that if he had such a beautiful daughter, he would listen to everything she says because the girl is very sweet. Suddenly, an excited Talon runs up to the couple and reports that something has happened. The king looks at the warrior in bewilderment, and he reports that Otter has disappeared. Sighing, Hakan says that he will come now and solve the problem. The man apologizes to Lucina and says that he needs to go urgently. The girl looks thoughtfully at herself in the mirror and wonders if Hakan really thinks she's cute. Remembering Carrot's words, Lucina turns to the maid and asks what it means to receive dragon energy. Titi wonders if the king did not tell his wife anything, then whether she has the right to do this. Deciding not to risk it, the maid says that receiving energy means conceiving and giving birth to a child for the dragon. When asked by the lady why everyone is talking about death, Titi replies that mothers of dragons often die during childbirth. Lucina muses that Carrot thinks she is too skinny and therefore might die. The maid says that giving birth to a dragon child is not easy, so the one who gives birth to an heir becomes the queen. The great Queen Carrot was a poor maid in the past, but she was able to give birth to the first king's child and became queen. Lucina happily understands that if she is only required to give birth to an heir, then she need not worry about her past. Titi confidently declares that her mistress will definitely give birth to a beautiful child and become a queen. Suddenly, Titi starts rummaging through the boxes and declares that the lady needs to wear sexy clothes to attract the king. Sitting at his mother's bedside, Hakan says she was surprised by his trip to Burke and scared that he had to go to war. Otter was once a great queen who was able to give birth to 2 dragon sons and receive the blessing of the fire god. 10 years ago, the queen was so shocked by the death of her son that she lost her mind and refused to acknowledge his death or bury him. Hakan's brother is in the Kozak, a sacred cave that has preserved his body for 10 years. The mother selflessly takes care of her son and believes that he will wake up and open his eyes. Standing up, the king sadly looks at his mother and tells Talon that they need to return to the main palace. On the street, the warrior wonders if his master would like to visit the palace with his bride. Hakan does not want to, but Talon begins to shout that with his behavior, the king will ensure that the women in the palace will tear each other to pieces. The warrior argues that Hakan must give life to his children, and if he does not like Lucina, then he must pay attention to Carrot. The young man says that 10 years ago, the crown prince got into a bloodbath and was killed. The king is silent, and Talon continues that if something happens to him, the line of the guardian dragon will be interrupted. Hakan coldly remarks that he has found a partner and does not understand what else Talon wants from him. The warrior notes that giving birth to a dragon is very difficult, so the first king spent his life among countless women. Exploding, Hakan shouts that he doesn't want to watch so many women slowly die. The king continues that Carrot managed to give birth to a son, but before that, many women died after spending the night with their brother. The guardian dragon does not give birth to daughters, and women of other races cannot withstand the power of his fire, so they die. Hakan states that people must accept death, but he cannot indiscriminately drag women into his bed. Riken told Hakan that most people simply sold their daughters to the palace. So many girls were scared and cried while going to the bedroom. The king says that his brother fell in love with Carrot because she was the only one who was not afraid of him. Talon asks in bewilderment why the ruler shouldn't marry the woman, especially since she herself wants it. The warrior reasons that Carrot already gave birth to a son once, which means she can do it again, and it will be for the benefit of the ruling Thayer dynasty. The king remembers Riken saying that as soon as he met Carrot, he immediately realized that she was born for him. The brother admitted that he really loved her and wanted her, so that they can be buried together. The brother assured that Hakan should also meet a woman who would not want to become a queen, but would simply love him. Emerging from his memories, Hakan declares that he does not like Carrot. Talon shouts that the ruler doesn't like either Carrot or Lucina, and he no longer knows what to do with all this. The king looks thoughtfully into the sky and ponders why dragons must take so many women's lives for the sake of reproduction. Talon notes that if it weren't for the dragons, the other bestial races would have been enslaved because the Bryans treat them like animals. The people of Bryan look down on the beastmen races and consider them barbarians. Enemies do not encroach on Thayer's lands only because they are afraid of the dragon race, which has the power of fire. Talon assures that without the power of the guardian dragon, it would be impossible to protect the inhabitants of these lands, and Hakan himself knows about this. The young man says that while the first king was alive, Hakan could afford such childish behavior, but now he needs an heir. Hakan sighs heavily and asks what to do if Lucina dies. Talon does not understand why the king cares so much about the girl, because she himself was going to kill her. The warrior notes that if Lucina had fallen into the hands of Bryan, she would still have died, and if she has such a fate, then it is better to use it for the benefit of Thayer. The young man frankly says that this is not the worst fate for Mrs. Lucina. Lying in bed, the girl hears Titi's words that the king is coming. The door opens. The king enters with glasses and wine and wonders if his wife is still sleeping. Hakan approaches the girl and speaks that the more he looks at her, the more beautiful she seems to him. The man wonders if the girl was sad because he hasn't been in the palace lately. Deciding not to wait, Hakan hugs his wife to him and kisses her tenderly on the lips. Lucina realizes that she doesn't feel afraid. Instead, she realizes that she feels incredibly good. The girl says that she wants more. Her husband picks her up and carries her to the bed. The husband puts Lucina on the bed and asks if she is ready to risk her life for him. Suddenly, Lucina looks up and asks if she's really cute. Hakan replies with a smile that everyone who looks at the girl will say the same thing. Suddenly, Lucina forcefully pushes the king away and asks him about Madame Carrot. Hakan does not understand what his wife is talking about, but she reports that Carrot is also very beautiful. Having made up her mind, Lucina asks if her husband likes Carrot, to which the king replies that now he is with Lucina and with no one else. The girl thoughtfully says that everyone is talking about the fact that the king will soon marry Madame Carrot. The king asks his wife to stop talking about the other woman, but she does not listen to him. Angry, Hakan says that if his wife talks about the woman again, he will get up and leave. Lucina says that her husband did not refute anything. In comparison with Carrot, she is clearly losing, and all the compliments are just lies. Hakan angrily remarks that he asked his wife to stop, but apparently she really wants him to leave. Without waiting for an answer, the man stands up abruptly and says that if Lucina does not want to be his wife, then just say so. Carrot laughingly asks the girls if Hakan really left Lucina and never came to the palace anymore. The maids say that the girl must not have wanted to have physical contact with a representative of a wild tribe, as they are considered in her lands. The woman happily says that the king hates boring women and will soon lose interest in the girl. Carrot notes that she was surprised that Hakan personally chose Lucina and brought her here, but now it is quite obvious that there is nothing to worry about. The maids obsequiously say that the king will be disappointed in the girl and will make their Lady Carrot the queen of Thayer. The woman remembers how Hakan, as a child, constantly spied on her and Raken. Carrot is sure that Hakan always wanted her, but turned his back because he could not bear the guilt. The woman is sure that the ruler will soon return to her, and the place of the queen will rightfully belong to Carrot. The king no longer came to Lucina, and Titi assured the girl that the king was simply very busy. Lucina, in despair, thinks that everything happened because she could not say what she wanted and angered her husband. The girl asks the surprised maid to help her and teach her to speak normally. The girl tries to explain that she wants to learn to speak coherently. Titi says that when she first started learning Thayer, it was also difficult for her, and she had to practice a lot. Lucina is surprised that the maid is not from Thayer. She was sure of the opposite. Titi says that she is from a neighboring land. She was told that if she became a maid in the palace, she could pay for the education of her brothers and sisters. Continuing to practice, Lucina asks how old Titi's brother and sister are. She answers that they are 13 and 15. Concentrating, the girl, almost without stuttering, says that she also has a brother, but they are not close to him at all. Suddenly, a maid enters the mistress's chambers and says that the wife of the late king is calling her. Lucina turns around in fright, not understanding what Carrot wants from her. Approaching Mistress Carrot, Titi repeats what she taught her mistress. The former queen reports that there will be a royal celebration soon, and the outfit from Burke looks like Lucina has nothing to wear at all. Carrot presents the girl with an outfit, telling her to put it on and join the party. Titi dares to notice to the lady that the black outfit is too reminiscent of mourning. Carrot calmly asks Lucina if she doesn't feel sorry for the master who sewed this outfit especially for her. Looking at her rival, Karen coldly tells her to put on her outfit and get out of her chambers. The woman states that Lucina may consider this outfit a gift that was given to her out of pity. Looking at her mistress, Titi angrily notices that at the festival, everyone will be in bright outfits, and simply no one will notice Lucina. The maid desperately says that the mistress may be misunderstood. They will think that she is in mourning for her dead relatives. Lucina realizes that if Hakan thinks as Titi says, then he may never want to see her again. Suddenly, a very strange woman comes into Lucina's chambers and says that she is hungry. The mistress asks who it is, but the maid says that she herself does not know, because she has not been living in the palace for so long. Meanwhile, Adar wonders why the white girl is wearing mourning clothes. Finding out that it's a party outfit, the woman offers to help, but Titi interrupts and asks who she is. The woman says that her name is Lita, and if she is given food, she will fix her dress. Titi tries to remember where she heard the name Lita. It seems to be similar to Queen Adar's handmaiden. The woman starts screaming. Lucina tells the maid to bring her food. The maids tell Carriage that Mrs. Ader tricked everyone again, escaped from the cave, and came to the palace. The woman reflects that the mother-in-law could well have gone to the Burke girl's chambers. Carrot decides that she will figure everything out on her own. There is no point in bothering the overlord over such trifles. Having received food, Lita pounces on it greedily, as if she had been starving for a long time. While Lucina and Titi were distracted, the woman grabbed scissors and began to cut the dress. Noticing what the uninvited guest is doing, the girls are horrified and don't know what to do with her. Twisting the scissors in her hands, Lita reveals that she can make an outfit that will make anyone instantly lose their head. Looking at Lucina, the woman says that if she wants to stand out in black, then she needs to do her makeup and hair. The carriage and the maid stand at the slightly open doors. The girl asks the mistress in bewilderment what they need to do. Turning around, Carrot says that they don't need to do anything and notes that she hasn't felt so happy in a long time. Lucina, horrified, wraps herself in a blanket and declares that she would never wear such an outfit to a party. Titi tries to pull the cover off and declares that the outfit is amazing. Looking at herself in the mirror, Lucina realizes that the outfit is too open and revealing for her. In the ballroom, the king wonders where his wife is. Talon replies that she is late and asks if he needs to bring her. Carrot comes up and notices that it must be difficult for Lucina to see her ruler. The woman says that the girl might have been afraid that the king would want to take her to bed again, but even this is not an excuse for being late. Håkon orders Talon to tell Lucina that if she does not want to attend the banquet, she can remain in her chambers. Carrot, watching the king, notices that the ruler is in a bad mood and, throwing off his cloak, offers to entertain him. The woman declares that she will dance for the great King Thayer. Watching the dance with delight, Talon notices that Carrot has always been good at dancing. Lucina and Titi stand in front of the ballroom and ask the guard why they can't enter. The warrior reports that only those who are wearing an outfit donated by Mrs. Carrot can enter the hall. Titi assures that her mistress is wearing exactly the same outfit. It's just been slightly altered to fit her figure. The man remembers that Mrs. Carrot wanted to mock the girl, but Lucina looks even sexier than the mistress herself. The warrior decides that he cannot let the girl in like this and forcefully pushes Titi aside. The girls fall to the ground, and the warrior decides that the king himself treats Lucina coldly, which means he doesn't have to stand on ceremony. The girls don't know what to do. If they don't enter the hall, the king will misunderstand everything. When the girls were completely desperate, Lucina suddenly noticed a small green bird. Håkon, listening to a familiar melody, drinks wine and plunges into memories. One day, Carrot danced in the same way, and Raken told his brother that the girl reminded him of a red poppy. Looking at the girl with adoration, Raken said that for the sake of such a flower, it would not be a sin to die in love. Raken was a great warrior who united Thayer and received the title of Great King. Everyone loved and respected the first king. His brother worshipped him and admired everything he had: weapons, wife, and throne. When Raken was mortally wounded, his only desire was to see his Carrot at least once more. According to Thayer's laws, Håkon had to sleep with Carrot, and if she bore him a son, then he had to marry her. The king could not be with Carrot, because she was actually in love with his brother. When leaving, Håkon said that he would find another queen, and Carrot could be free from obligations. The woman tried to stop Håkon and said that she loved Raken like a king. Carrot admitted that as a man, she always loved only Håkon. What he heard greatly amazed the man. He believed so much in sincere love between his brother and his wife. Not noticing the king's reaction, the woman says that she will definitely give birth to an heir and become queen again. The king grabs his head. As soon as he plunges into these unpleasant memories, his head begins to hurt badly. Suddenly, the man looks up and sees a beautiful vision that reminds him of a black butterfly. Looking at Lucina, Håkon thinks that it's as if moonlight illuminated their oasis, and is surprised to realize that he even lost his headache. Lucina asked Fuku to help her, and the little bird hit the guard in the face with its droppings. While the guard tried to fight off the bird, Titi told Lucina to take this chance and enter the hall. Standing in front of the king, the girl gathers her thoughts and remembers everything that her faithful maid taught her. Bowing, Lucina greets the great king and wishes him happiness and prosperity. Håkon looks at his wife in surprise. Is this really the modest Lucina who doesn't even know how to speak coherently? Carrot, in a rage, asks the guard why he let Lucina into the hall. The man asks for forgiveness for being distracted. Hiding his admiration, Håkon notices that his wife was quite late. Titi asks the Lord for forgiveness and explains that the delay was due to an incident. Suddenly, the king notices bruises on his wife's arms, and the maid says that the guard did not let them inside and even hit the mistress because of the prohibited outfit. Håkon turns to Carrot in amazement and suspiciously asks what this other forbidden outfit is. Carrot, realizing that he was caught, slaps the guard in the face and loudly asks how he dared not let the lady into the hall. The woman asks the king for forgiveness, saying that there was a misunderstanding and she will seriously punish the culprit. The king enragedly declares that what happened is simply unacceptable and orders Talon to hand over his sword. Approaching the guard, Håkon will declare that he dared to hit the king's wife, showing disrespect for the owner of the palace and all of Thayer. Lucina tries to stop her husband and assures that everything is fine with her. Approaching his wife, the king declares that in this palace no one can touch her except himself. Håkon says that disdaining Lucina means being Thayer's enemy, and they will pay for this insolence with their lives. Carrot, feeling guilty, remarks that today is the day of the royal festival. So is it really necessary to shed blood? Turning sharply, Håkon asks if it was Carrot's idea to keep Lucina out of the hall. The woman reflects that she has not seen the king since the day the girl refused intimacy. so she decided that he had lost interest in her. Realizing that there is no longer any point in going against the king, Carrot declares that she could not do this to the king's wife. Without looking at the guard, the woman says that she only told him to be careful, but he obviously decided to interpret the order in his own way. The young man listens in horror as the mistress asks the ruler to cruelly punish him. Hakan turns Lucina away from the people and asks her to close her eyes and ears and not open them until he tells her. A moment later, the king orders the body to be thrown into the Valley of Fire and the hall to be put in order. Taking his wife in his arms, the king informs everyone that the holiday is over and orders them to disperse. Leaving, Hakan says that he will be in the palace with Lucina and orders not to disturb them. In the chambers, the king carefully tells his wife that everything is fine now and she has nothing to worry about. Hakan worries that the girl might be scared because a person died before her eyes. Lucina admits that she is scared, but thanks her husband for doing this because of her. The man asks for forgiveness for yelling at the girl last time. He had long wanted to apologize but could not find the words. Lucina cuddles up to Hakan and says that she would also like to apologize for being stupid and angering her husband. The girl admits that she wanted to find her master and apologize, but she was afraid that she would say something wrong again. Hakan puts Lucina on her feet and tells her that he doesn't want to scare her again. If she is afraid to go to his bedroom, then he will take her back to the castle. The girl takes the king's cape with her hand and says that she wants to stay with him. Looking up, Lucina honestly admits that she still doesn't know if she's ready to die for her husband. The girl enthusiastically explains that she needs to get to know her husband as a person before deciding to give her life for him. Hakan laughs and remarks that they really don't know each other at all. The man declares that the girl is stunningly beautiful today, and as soon as she entered the hall, he forgot about everything in the world. Lucina doubtfully asks if the ruler liked her outfit. Leaning towards his wife's ear, Hakan says that the outfit is simply stunning, but asks the girl not to wear it again. The king explains that he doesn't want others to see his wife like this. Only he can look at her. Noticing that the girl's skin shines against the background of black fabric, Hakan cannot cope with his emotions and kisses his wife. The girl jumps away from the man and states that today she just wanted to talk to him. Hakan pours wine into glasses and invites Lucina to sit next to him. The girl sits opposite, and the king asks what his wife would like to know about him. After drinking wine for courage, Lucina asks how old the king is. Pouring more wine, Hakan says that by human standards he is 27 years old, so he is not much older than his wife. Remembering Titi's advice, Lucina wonders what her husband likes and what he is interested in. Noticing that his wife has finished another glass, the man says that it is Thayer wine and offers to pour another. Lucina drinks wine with pleasure. She really likes its taste. And she also noticed that the more she drinks, the less nervous she becomes. Hakan is surprised to notice that his wife drinks much better than he thought. Stroking his wife on the cheek, the king says that he also has many questions, and he hopes that the girl will be able to answer them honestly. Suddenly, Hakan invites Lucina to play an interesting game. The king explains the rules. If a girl wants to answer a question, she answers. If she doesn't want to answer, then she drinks wine. Hakan decides that he will start first and asks what kind of men Lucina likes. Seeing his wife drinking a glass of wine, the king laughingly invites her to ask a question. Looking into her glass, Lucina sheepishly asks what kind of girls Hakan likes. The man replies that he wants to meet a girl who will love him as Hakan and not as a great king. The king asks his question whether the girl always spoke so well. Lucina admits that she used to speak poorly, but once in the castle, she practiced a lot. The girl says that the maid helped her. She didn't want to talk like a fool in front of her king. Hakan is flattered by his wife's words and says that Lucina did a very good job. The man reflects that the girl seemed small and timid to him, but in reality she turned out to be much stronger and braver than he thought. The king reflects that her original bold personality turned timid after she was abused. Hakan wonders if the girl was beaten in her family when she was little, and if the girl ran away from home. Lucina reflects that status doesn't seem to matter in the castle, but Hakan might think she's dirty if she finds out that her mother is a vicious woman. Suddenly, Lucina declares that the overlord's question is invalidated because it is her turn to ask. The girl was silent for a while, and then made up her mind and asked what her husband thought about her. Hakan directly says that he likes his wife, and it seems to him that the more he looks at her, the greater his attraction. The man affectionately says that he does not want to hurt his wife. He just wants to make her his queen and spend many years together. Leaning towards Lucina, the king declares that he wants to hug her now and fall asleep hugging her every night. Approaching the girl's face, Håkon asks what she, in turn, thinks about him. Looking at her reflection in the glass, Lucina says that sometimes she was a little scared. The girl confidently says that now she doesn't mind sleeping with Håkon at all. Lucina notices that her husband has a very beautiful body, and she is embarrassed when she looks at him, and she is also afraid that he will sleep with someone else. Suddenly, the king pulls Lucina towards him and kisses her tenderly on the lips. Hugging his wife tightly, Håkon promises her that in the future he will share his bed only with her. The man reflects that he cannot hide the secret forever from such an honest and brave woman. Hugging his wife, the king declares that he has something to tell her. The man says that guardian dragons have fiery energy, and few women are able to cope with it. Once a woman has a child with a dragon, in most cases they get sick and die. But in severe cases, the woman may stop breathing even during intimacy. Håkon admits that as soon as he developed feelings for his wife, he was afraid that, having learned the truth, she would reject him and want to leave. The king understands that he acted cowardly and will understand if Lucina wants to return back to Berk. Håkon fearfully awaits an answer, but for some reason Lucina does not say a word. A lot of wine and the warmth emanating from her husband completely exhausted the girl, and she simply fell asleep, not hearing what her husband admitted. The king puts Lucina to bed, carefully covering her with a blanket. The man looks at his wife and says with embarrassment that he really doesn't know what to do with her. The maids sadly tell Koretz that the king and Lucina spent the whole night in the royal chambers. The woman thinks with anger that this is the first time in her memory that this has happened. Lucina dreams of a huge, hard, and juicy apple, which she hugs tightly. The apple attracts the girl so much that she can't stand it and opens her mouth to take a bite. Running her hands over Håkon's chest, Lucina opened her mouth, about to bite his chest, which she imagines to be an apple. Opening her eyes, the girl moves away from the man in horror, amazed at what happened. Lucina looks around in bewilderment and tries to understand where she is and how she ended up here. Pressing her hand to her forehead, the girl remembers that she and Håkon drank wine and talked yesterday. After making sure that her husband is asleep, Lucina quietly gets out of bed, intending to leave unnoticed. At the royal chambers, Talon and Titi are worried that the lady has not yet come out, fearing the worst. Suddenly, the door opens and Lucia comes out, suffering from a severe hangover. The servants rush to the mistress as fast as they can, asking if she is all right. The girl asks Titi not to scream like that, because she is in great pain, thinking that she obviously had too much wine yesterday. The maid asks how much pain Lucina is in, thinking about how she survived the night with the king, and the lady replies that she can't even walk, thinking about the severe hangover. The servants are amazed that such a fragile girl could withstand the power of her master, and Lucina only thinks about her sore head. The girl doesn't quite understand what the servants are talking about. They probably know how much wine she drank yesterday. The mistress's head is so ringing that she has difficulty speaking and quietly tells Titi that she needs water. Talon tells the maid to escort the lady who will bring prosperity to Thayer. Entering the chambers, the warrior greets the lord and notices that he is in a good mood. Talon says the king's face is just shining. He must have had a good night. The man remembers Lucina's words about how handsome he is, and Håkon asks the surprised Talon if it is true that he has the most beautiful body. Håkon reveals that his wife told him about it and remarks that Lucina was incredible last night. Talon joyfully shouts that the master did a great job, and now Lady Lucina will give birth to a dragon child. The warrior informs the king that he has learned that he was ordered by his master. The warrior says that in addition to Lucina, he found 2 more people with silver hair and eyes. Talon reports that one girl recently died of illness, and the other was an orphan and was taken to the temple by Brian's people. Moreover, the warrior adds, Baroness Burke is not Lucina's biological mother. Talon says that the girl's mother was a famous high-class courtesan who was known to all the aristocrats of the capital. There are rumors that the woman was killed by a conspiracy of noble ladies whose husbands were bewitched by her. Talon learned that when Lucina was little, not a single day passed without wounds on her face, and she was treated worse than a maid. Hakan understands how difficult it was for his wife and asks the warrior not to spread this information, and he himself will pretend that he knows nothing. Talon states that in Thayer, it does not matter whether a girl is a slave or a prostitute. The only important thing is whether she can give birth to a dragon or not. The king says that his wife is from Brian, and she may be ashamed of her origin, but he does not want to complicate her life. Hakan states that from now on, Lucina's life will be filled only with happiness and joy. Suddenly, Talon wonders how long the Overlord is going to keep Raken's body, and whether it's time to bury him. The warrior says that the king's mother is not herself. The ministers may regard the situation as a violation of the body, and then Lady Outer's position may be in danger. The warrior confidently says that the previous king should find peace next to his ancestors. The young man asks, before a new queen appears in the palace, to pay tribute to the past king and establish new laws. Suddenly, Talon changes the subject and states that Titi took the lady to the pool and asks if the king would like to join her. Hakan thoughtfully replies that he and Lucina need to finish the conversation they didn't finish last night.